big question then is how quickly do we go to an election?
Right.
And the answer, Stefan, is going to be quick.
Yep, election's coming. Everybody get ready.
The Liberal leadership race is about to conclude, which means a new Prime Minister will soon be in place, and everyone is now talking about an imminent election shortly thereafter. Sorry, Jagmeet, you blew it.
Let's take a look.
Priorities for the new Prime Minister this election. If, for example, Mark Carney, who is deemed the front runner, is the next leader of the Liberal Party, we know that he's not actually officially an elected leader. So this election will be very telling because he will have to choose a riding to run in and hopefully be elected. Then he has to actually win seats. Once he wins those seats, selecting a cabinet, if that comes to pass, we don't necessarily expect a shuffle of cabinet prior to an election being called, but if they are successful, who gets what portfolio? And this will be very important when it comes to things like the trade war or conversations with other world leaders. Where will Canada stand in all of this when it comes to building a global alliance, perhaps with others, away from the U.S. if this trade war lingers and continues? We want to bring in Sunday's vote expert, Scott Reid. He's a political analyst for CTV News. Great to have you join us on CTV Morning Live, Scott.
Morning, Stefan.
What are you going to be looking for when it comes to these results on Sunday?
Well, there's a few curious things to watch in the vote, and we'll be down there broadcasting all the speeches and developments. But one, does Carney win? How quickly? That's the expectation. Does he win on the first ballot? Does it have to go to a second ballot? Which I'll just end the suspense now. He's almost certainly going to win on the first ballot. And even if he doesn't, it's like a tabulation of a recorded vote. So there won't be like a dramatic, oh my God, 3 men met in a cigar-filled room, they cut a deal, and now he's emerged as the winner. It'll be a pretty mathematical event. So he becomes leader. I'll be watching to see who comes second. You would never have for a second thought that Chrystia Freeland would be in any position other than first or second when this race started. But Karina Gould has really come on, generated a bit of energy and enthusiasm. Does that translate into votes? So on the pure evening, I'll be watching for that in terms of vote totals. And then I'll be watching to see how Carney takes the stage and what he has to say, given all that is happening in the country and around the world.
You know, we just broke down what could happen when the new leader is announced. What do you predict the new leader will do after being successful or elected for leadership of the Liberal Party?
Well, let me scare you first and just put it in historical context. Yeah. When my old boss, Paul Martin, was elected leader of the Liberal Party, that was on November 14th, okay, in 2003. He then didn't actually become Prime Minister until December 12th. So almost a whole month passed. Right. I do not think we're going to see a whole month pass before they move. So I think you'll see, given the circumstances, the trade and tariff war with Trump, all of the political demand for change, the imminent return of Parliament on the 24th of March, I think you're going to see a transition that's maybe a week long. I think that maybe from Sunday to Sunday, you're going to see Mr. Carney installed as Prime Minister, so a very quick transition by historical standards. Then he'll form a cabinet. We'll be curious to see what kind of cabinet he picks, who's he installs as Finance Minister. How much of it is legacy cabinet of what we have now versus how much of it is a shuffle of people that he's decided to put into place? What happens with Chrystia Freeland? Does she sit in cabinet? And if so, in what position? All those kinds of real insidery political things. But the big question then is how quickly do we go to an election? Right. And the answer, Stefan, is going to be quick.
And some say it will have to be quick because people are taking issue with the fact that if Mark Carney is successful, that he is not technically an elected official. And so they are waiting to see if that happens. We saw in the Ontario election that, you know, someone like Crombie lost her seat, even though they gained seats as a party.
There are 3 or 4 reasons, all of which sort of push you toward a quick election call by Carney if he becomes PM on Sunday. So first there is his question of he doesn't have a seat. He's never actually run for elected office, and boom, he gets to start in the first day at the very top. So, there's the question of he'll want to seek a mandate. Second, we are obviously in a time of incredible churn and turmoil. Every day Donald Trump slaps on a tariff, removes a tariff, sets a deadline, breaks a deadline, dangles the prospect of economic ruin in front of us, and then yanks it away. We need a stronger hand to deal with that. I suspect that Carney will want to call an election to say, let's settle this issue. Let's be crystal clear who our federal negotiator is, who the opposite on the table from Trump will be. And I think the other big reason is, let's be honest, it's pure politics. Carney has actually captured some momentum in the polls. There are polls that show that as Liberal leader and Prime Minister, Carney brings the party back to a neck-and-neck fight with Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, largely driven by the belief that perhaps Carney is well suited to manage this issue of trade in an international financial crisis, given his background. So he's going to want to bank that momentum, get a campaign underway, try to do his best to say, this is my one and best shot. Let's have this campaign. Let's give the wheel a spin.
All right, folks. So Scott Reed he's about as partisan a liberal as you can get. So you've seen him a few times. That's his take on this. So, number one, not that this is a surprise, Mark Carney's going to be the Liberal leader.
That's all we've been hearing the entire leadership race. So
right since the beginning.
I mean, something could happen Sunday. We'll see. But honestly, I won't be surprised if Carney wins.
Right. And number two, this is becoming the worst kept secret in Canada. There's going to be an election very, very shortly. Again, you're wrapping the Liberal plane. You're ordering signs. All the parties are preparing for it.
Well, and I'm starting at least to see ads on my Facebook. Order your sign. Get involved in your party. So they wouldn't be paying for those types of ads. Like your local EDA would not be paying for those ads if an election was not coming.
Campaign offices are being opened, folks. Like the candidates and the MPs are literally opening and renting space for campaign offices.
That is true. I did hear that from a family member who's involved in their EDA here in Ontario, that they are moving into a proper office now. So it's coming.
So this aligns with what we surmised would happen, in that Tony's talked many times about the fact that Carney being an unelected prime minister, that's going to cause some problems for the Liberal Party.
Now, you do have that by-election that's going to be happening on, I think it was April the 14th in Halifax. Theoretically, Carney could push out the candidate there and try to run there, but I think it would look really bad. I don't think that's how it's going to happen. I think Carney wants to run on his own mandate, which is why an election is going to be called properly a general election. And then that Halifax by-election will be canceled and the riding of Halifax will go to general election with everybody else in Canada.
Well, and here's one of the other reasons. World leaders are not going to take Mark Carney seriously if he does not win the prime minister position legitimately.
Well, and that's it. Could you imagine having the prime minister win in a by-election? It's happened in the past, but does it look proper? Not really.
Well, and can you imagine a prime minister without a seat in parliament trying to negotiate with world leaders? They can be like, you're not the legitimate prime minister. Why am I talking to you?
Okay, maybe we could sit beside him in the gallery.
Maybe. And we could tell him, shh.
No talking. No talking.
So, but the other point that I think is very interesting that Brian Lilly raised is the more Mark Carney talks and doesn't talk, the worse things are getting for him. Now, we expected the tightening of the polls, which is happening for the legitimate polls, and we are also expecting that gap to change once the election is called. So the issue is going to be, how is this going to change now? Because the polls now for the legitimate polls are starting to widen again. And they're widening because of Mark Carney's poor performance, because he can't answer questions, because he won't answer questions. He's being caught in contradictions. His campaign is trying to explain these contradictions and why he's quote unquote lied on multiple occasions. So it's not going well for him.
Well, and he's starting to become the butt of jokes. I mean, look at our live stream last Sunday. You guys had some fantastic jokes about what Mark Carney has or hasn't done. You know, one of my favorites was that Mark Carney designed all of Don Cherry's suit jackets. Just these ridiculous things that are making him look foolish.
Right. So you now have liberal insiders are saying, yeah, there's going to be an election called almost immediately. And here's the other thing that is going to be very interesting is that the transition between Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney, it's estimated it's going to be within a week. Well, if Mark Carney is going to be calling an election around the 16th of March, he has to be the prime minister in order to do that. That transition has to be complete. And let's be honest, folks, it sounds like the transition has already started, because you already have Melanie Joly admitting for all to hear that she's been briefing Mark Carney.
Why would you do that to somebody who's not even an elected leader yet? They are just a candidate.
Which means that we were right in our initial assessment a couple of weeks ago when Mark Carney said that he's been kept in the loop. And we said, well, wait a minute. Why are you being kept in the loop? Why aren't the other candidates being kept in the loop?
Why not Freeland? I mean, she's at least an MP. She's not in cabinet anymore, but she's at least an MP. Karina Gould's in cabinet, so she's probably already somewhat in the loop. I mean, what about Bayless? You know, like, it seems very odd that Mark Carney is the one being kept in the loop.
Right. And it's like everybody knew that he was going to be voted the leader. So, but you know, when you have the prime minister's office throwing everything behind him in order to ensure that he wins, well, you know, that's what ends up happening. So they've already been briefing him on all these negotiations. They've been, who knows what the heck else that they've been briefing him on. He's attained and been given his national or his security clearance, which is strange. Why are you giving somebody security clearance when they're not even a member of parliament? And they're not in cabinet yet. Like, he hasn't won yet. So why are you giving that to him? So you have all this stuff that is accelerating the transition between Trudeau and Carney. And that's a good idea for Carney. Carney should be getting Trudeau as far away from him as fast as possible, because otherwise he risks a whole bunch of disenfranchised people again.
Well, and you risk like commingling those brands, right? The Trudeau brand, which is tainted. I mean, we've seen what Trudeau did to this country. And then if he sticks around for too long, then he starts to taint the Carney brand, which would be bad for the Liberals.
Right. So that's what's going to end up happening in the coming weeks, folks. So this is getting interesting. Mainstream media is essentially like, yep, election's coming. Everybody get ready. It's imminent. And that aligns with what we've been hearing and relaying to you folks for a couple of weeks now. So the race, from what we've seen, the voting is going to be concluded at 3 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, March 9th. And then depending on how long it takes them to count the votes, I don't know if they're going to be doing it really fast. Sometimes in the past it has taken 2 to 3 hours to count the votes. Scott Reed seems to think this is going to be a first round pick. Yeah. And we won't really bother going into, you know, these multiple rounds this time, just because it's a ranked ballot system. It's not first past the post. It's a ranked ballot system. Interesting
how they use that for their party leadership, but refuse to change Canada's electoral system.
Isn't that interesting? But that's what's going to end up happening. Pierre Poilievre was a first round pick for the leader, and it's just because of the percentage of people who picked him as number one. That's
was so high, yeah.
So that's basically what it comes down to. And then there may be some speeches and whatnot, but we're going to be covering that on our Sunday weekly live stream at 9:30 Eastern time. So hopefully we can cut out all of the really cringy parts and the boring parts, and we will discuss what's going to be happening over the next couple of weeks. But one thing's for sure, part of what's going to be happening is an election will be called.